Okay, so thank you, Niels. For those who don't know me, I'm Teun. I work for BIT. I'm one of the NLNOG board members, and well, quite involved in all the tools and projects we're doing. I will be talking mostly about the things you probably know, but I'm just doing a recap so everyone knows what we have, how you can use it, and well, basically that. So that's the NLNOG ring, which has been presented here quite a number of times. IRR Explorer, BGP Filter guide, and the looking glass. Well, you see the URLs here. You can find them on our website as well. Starting off with the NLNOG ring, which is, I think, the biggest project we have right now. And it started out very simple. You start with providing a shell server in your network, and you get access to shell servers by other networks and all over the world. And that can be useful to debug all sorts of problems. And well, in all those years, some cool tools were built to use the ring. So where are we now? We're well over 600 nodes by now. We're nearly at 500 ASNs. We're in 56 countries, and we're still lacking one continent. I think Martin actually mentioned that last year, but I think it will be challenging to get a node on the Antarctic, so we're still praying. So as you can see, they're all over the world. We have many of the bigger countries covered right by now, and well, you can get a shell server in any network. Run your tests and well, see if there is a problem with your network, with their network, somewhere in between, or something like that. So there are all sorts of tools we have available for that, like ring ping, which is a tool to do a ping from many networks to a specific destination. Ring curl, which does a retrieval of a specific URL. Ring all, which basically allows you to do anything on a lot of nodes. Ring trace, which makes nice graphs from trace routes, and SQA. And SQA does a sort of performance monitoring of your ring node. And of course, since it all are Linux machines, you have all the Linux tools available you could think of, like MTR, traceroute, TCP dump, you name it, it's there. So, well, ring ping, as I mentioned, you can use it just by logging into your ring node and run a ring ping with a destination. I chose min-v for verbose and min-n5 to reduce the number of nodes tested. Well, you get a nice output. These nodes are able to ping your destination. These aren't. These are the statistics, and that's it. Then there's a ring trace, a tool I wrote, I think about 10 years ago when the ring just started. And ring trace basically does trace routes from a number of nodes and tries to make a nice graph. And well, if you run it like this, which basically says again, use 5 nodes, min-a for ASN aggregation, so you don't look at the IP hops, but you look at the ASNs. -b is ignore the broken hops and put it on a paste bin for the capital B. And you get something like this, when you can see, well, the NLNOG ring is hosted at the CLDIN network. And well, there are 5 nodes which were used to do the traceroute from, and well, they have pretty different paths towards the network. One AS1299, ServNet, and LAX. The 2 Amazon networks that are used are pretty funny because although they both go via the ASN of Amazon, they choose a different upstream provider for CLDIN. AS6543 and Cogent. So this helps you make a graph of how your network or a specific destination is reachable. Then there's SQA. SQA is a tool that runs on every ring node by default. What it does is basically check every other node rapidly. It just does, well, it's not a ping, but it's a sort of ping. And what it then does is if the number of nodes that are reachable drastically changes, it sends an alert. And it also collects all this data on the website sqa.ring.nlnog.net. And yes, we know that it's a slow website. There's a lot of heavy lifting in the background, and it's not really optimized still. And the SQA side can be used to see if there, is a common factor in what possibly caused the outage. So it can spot if a specific ASN is detected to be in the path of all the nodes becoming unavailable. So you can see, well, this specific network or this internet exchange is probably the cause of all these nodes becoming unavailable. If your node detects a significant change in the number of available nodes, you get an email typically. It's a bit like you see here. It tells you which nodes became unavailable. So sometimes it helps to see the country code. As you can see here, the .au indicates that a specific part of the world had some trouble reaching a destination. And on the right you see how the number of nodes being able to reach your node became, from 42 up to 115 or 56 even in a short amount of time. You can configure your own alerts for this, like you can integrate it in a webhook or something like that, so you can automate your network monitoring that way. It can help you detect reachability issues for your network. A few other remarks about the NLNOG ring. Most of them, or I think even all of them, require SSH to access, and they require an SSH agent with agent forwarding to work. So that's something to keep in mind if you start using it. And our advice is always to use dedicated SSH keys for the ring, so you don't mix them with your work keys. If you want to update your SSH keys for your company, you can do that on manage.ring.nlnog.net. There's a file there called SSH keys. If you put a new version of the keys for your company there, wait a few hours, it will be deployed on all ring nodes. If you have any questions on how the ring works, there's ring admins at nlnog.net, and there's #ring on the IRC network. And people are happy to help you there. Plans with the NLNOG ring for the coming time. The big thing we will be looking at is upgrading the ring nodes to a newer Ubuntu release, because 18.04 is now still the standard, and it will be end of life somewhere in, I think, April of next year. So we need to do some work there, and it mainly requires rewriting some of the Ansible scripts for managing the ring nodes. Another tool we have, which we didn't build ourselves, but we had dashboard, what was it? Dashcare, oh yeah. Built is IRR Explorer. And that's available on irrexplorer.nlnog.net. And the concept of IRR Explorer is to give an overview for a prefix or a set of prefixes from all your database registrations, your RPKI ROAs, your routing table information, and suggest information on that, improvements, and point out conflicts. And this should help you to improve reachability of your prefixes, and hopefully eventually also create cleaner IRR databases. So how does it work? If you go to the IRR Explorer website, you basically get a form with just one field. You enter an IP address or a prefix, and you press submit, and then you get something like this. And here, as you can see, there's that nice little advice that says everything's looking good. Well, what do we actually see here? The first thing, of course, is the prefix as it's found in any source, which can be an IRR database, which can be a routing entry in one of the routing tables. Could be an RPKI ROA. Next up is the RIR responsible for the allocation or assignment. Well, in this case, we're looking at well-known, good prefix by the RIPE NCC. In this case, RIPE NCC is responsible for this. We see that AS12654 is advertising it in BGP, and that there's an RPKI ROA for it for that specific ASN up to /84. And therefore, everything is looking good. There's no conflict, there's no mismatch, there are no things missing. This is what you want to see. But sometimes things are not looking that good. Well, I entered 1.1.1.1, the DNS server by Cloudflare. The first entry, obviously, is the one Cloudflare entered. It's looking good. It has RPKI enabled. It's registered in the APNIC database. But then there are two other entries which obviously shouldn't be seen. And well, as you can see by the colors, there's a lot that's wrong. First of all, there's no RPKI route object found because there is an RADB entry for AS2764, but AS2764 is not in the ROA, which is defined. And then the database entry is in RADB, even though you would expect it in the APNIC database. And lastly, even though there's a route object, there's no route seen in the DFZ, in the default free zone, which actually is a good thing, because if we would see 1.1.1.3 in the DFZ, well, you shouldn't be seeing that. So obviously someone entered these two database entries for the /32s in the RADB database. In this case, it probably doesn't hurt much because RPKI and route filtering would just completely ignore this, but still this should be cleaned up. This is an example of something which is obviously wrong, but IRR Explorer can also find more subtle details on things that are not correct, missing ROAS, or well, maybe you have a routing entry for the /22 and you have a /23 in your configuration, stuff like that, and it really helps you just give a complete overview of that. So what are the use cases for IRR Explorer? Improving routability of your prefixes by, well, making sure everything is okay. The chances that your prefix is routed, it just increases. It also helps you spot entries in IRR databases which shouldn't be there. Could help you analyze specific routing problems. If you have a destination you can't reach, you enter it in IRR Explorer and you see all those red flags, they could mean that something is wrong with it. It's a very useful tool when you have to move prefixes from one network to another. So if a customer comes to you and says, well, can you start advertising my network? This really helps. And you can monitor your prefixes, because everything IRR Explorer shows you in a web page is also available via an API, and then it's just JSON output you can use in your monitoring tools. Probably one of the less known things we do is the BGP Filter Guide. And the BGP Filter Guide is basically a set of documents which help you build well, a pretty sane set of import filters for your BGP router. And they're based on, well, common knowledge, things you should take a look at. And the useful thing is that we added configuration examples for many router OSs. So I think most of the popular router brands are covered by now. But if you have any additions, suggestions, things you think are incorrect, feel free to let us know and we'll take a look at it. The URL for it is bgpfilterguide.nlnog.net. Well, the last one I wanted to talk about is our looking glass. We recently moved the looking glass from a server hosted at Access for All to a virtual machine at BIT. And in the process, we decided to switch from BERT to OpenBGPD due to some technical reasons. The looking glass is now collecting data from about 140 IPv4 and IPv6 peers. Most of them send a full table, which means that we're even over the 87 million IPv4 routes now. We're getting close to 90. I hope to reach the 100 somewhere soon. And 40 million IPv4 addresses, prefixes, sorry. So how does it work? What does it look like? Well, this is it. It changed a bit since the previous incantations we had. Right now you enter a prefix or you enter an IP address and you press show routes. You can select if you want to see the routes from all peers which know something about it or just one specific. And then you get a lot of information. You get, well, the AS path, obviously. You get the RPKI validation state. And one cool thing we added is that we try to keep track of what communities mean. So in this example, it's not that good, that readable, unfortunately. The blue boxes with communities next to it, they show the community numbers, for example, 12859.3000, but also a description originated by bit. We are now collecting information on communities from various networks so that we can show them here. So it gets clear what communities are added to a prefix and what they mean. So if you do have a list of your communities, please send them to us or send a pull request so we can add them. I think we have most tier ones covered by now, some other networks as well. It's, well, this Looking Glass is live now for a little over 2 weeks, and it's growing fast, so that's nice to see. What could we use? Additional BGP peers and community descriptions. If you don't know how to send a pull request or how to create the file we need, feel free to send me a PDF or a text file with, well, this is it, and go figure it out, and I'll arrange it. Contact for setting up this stuff. ringadmins@nlnog.net. Create a PR on our GitHub repository, or feel free to talk to me. Well, of course, we have quite an active community. There's the NLNOG mailing list, our IRC channels, #NLNOG and #ring on IRCnet. If you want to know more about the IRC channel, you can read it on nlnog.net/IRC. Well, of course, we are on YouTube, we're on Twitter, we are on Facebook even. Lastly, I would like to thank everyone who has participated in building these tools and maintaining them, because there's a lot of work in that as well, for doing an awesome job. And that is it. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Teun? Any feature requests? Any?
Yes, features requests I always have, of course. No, thank you, Teun, very well. I just wanted to, I like all the tools. I've recently been using the IRR Explorer quite a lot to clean up 2,200 prefixes for our customers. I think you forgot one use case. Okay. And that's, when I try to convince customers that they have an issue, if I can send them to an independent portal saying, there's something wrong with your prefix, and it is in red, green, and yellow, the managers understand. I think this is a very good...
I agree with that, yes.
Yeah, it's very good. So thank you for that. Feature request. There's one thing that I sort of missed, but I realized that you have to catch all the INetNum objects as well from all the RERs. And that is, it would help me a lot if I could get the LIR that's responsible for the ROAS. And that's usually the LIR and the INetNum object, so you need to catch those. And the country where the INetNum is registered. Okay. The other thing that I would love to have, but I don't know if it's easily built, try to build a customer cone for an ASN. I know there's some website that can do this. Kaida has something, but they don't really give you all the prefixes back, but just, is this ASN a customer of yours or not? Is it downstream or peer? There's this dan.me.uk guy that when you fill in an ASN, you get back your customer cones. For me, that would help to see if, I have RPKI deployed everywhere.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's good feedback, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions for Teun?